Hey, what's going on? It's Quinn David Furness. Welcome to my show. Quinn David Furness presents the Beantown podcast for Sunday, November 22nd, 2020, episode 150. Whoa, that is exciting. It's not the sexiest of milestones, but it is cool nonetheless. My name is Quinn Furness, and this is my show, and I am excited to be coming to you live. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Facebook. Live from. We are happy to see you. I feel like a church service right now, broadcasting. We just need to get a Zoom link going. I tell you what, I don't know if I'm the only one, probably, but I have liked a number of church pages on Facebook that I was once involved with. So, I mean, we've got, Rock Church from Rockford, Illinois going. They always have a Sunday morning live stream. I was tuning into Pastor Jared Katkey's sermon a little bit earlier today, and boy, the music has really gone downhill at Rock Church. We've also got the Cherry Valley United Methodist Church, where Scott Farrell was once the choir director. It is less exciting now because Scott has moved out to Seattle. According to his Twitter, he is not enjoying himself. That's a shame. We've got the Live in Testimony House of Worship on the west side of Chicago, where I was the worship pastor for 3 weeks. Big time money. And boy, we've got Audacious Praise, Lonnie Norwood Jr. Down on the south side of Chicago, Englewood style. So there's just a lot of streams and feeds to keep track of. And I feel like this might be the holiest of all. This is my show, Quinn David Furness presents the Beantown podcast, and we are very excited. We've got an action-packed day today, although I promise it's not going to be quite as long as last week. You know what? We started the New England road trip 4 weeks ago. This is part 4, the finale to our trip. And I said at the outset, we're going to try to keep these installments brief. And we did really well. The first one was 30 minutes. And then the next one was 40-ish. And then last week was over an hour, which was crazy. But man, we just had so much to get through. Not to mention recapping the New Housewives of Salt Lake City season premiere. So we're going to be, all the other places in Utah where they hail from. And then, we've got a couple other things to touch on here. And we'll finish recapping the New England road trip. Thanks to all who have followed us in that journey. If you missed the first couple parts, you might be wondering, well, Quinn, I subscribe to you on YouTube. I follow you. Where has it been? You know this by now. We kind of pop in and out of YouTube. We don't have it's not every single episode of the Beantown podcast is not on there, and certainly not even most. But you can always find the latest Beantown podcast episodes. Just because it only pops up on YouTube, once a month or so, doesn't mean we're not still, coming to you live every single week. So you can find those, usually if you check in on my Facebook on a Monday morning or something, it's pretty easy to find the link. But honestly, if you just go to beantownpodcast.com, the newest episode will always be right there on the homepage. It's automatically updated. I don't even have to do anything. You can also follow us on SoundCloud, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or whatever your podcast app is. That's the easiest way. My promise to you, until you hear from us differently, we make a big announcement, although hopefully that will never happen. We've got a new episode coming to you. Every Monday morning, you wake up, get your cup of joe, and you're going to have a new Beantown podcast from over the weekend. Sometimes we record earlier in the week. Sometimes we record later in the week. And then on very, very rare occasions, if it's a 3-day weekend on, stretching into a Monday, we'll record on the Monday, but that has only happened a handful of times, if that. So episode number 150, that's very exciting. We only have after this, 4 or 5 more, shows coming up in the calendar year before we get ready for a year 3 recap. And I see in the live stream, we've got a comment from Jess from Britain. Hello. Good to see you. It's probably late afternoon, early evening in Britain. Sun's going down. I don't know. It is good to see though, that we are going international. It's tough because the Beantown podcast, as far as I know, has not really been translated into any other languages. We need, who was that first guy who translated the Bible into German or something so that the Lutherans could read it? Not Calvin. I don't remember who it was. Someone in the comments, do a little, it is dark. Yes, we're just reading the streams here. Jess, if you want, I'm going to put you to work. If you want to look up who translated the Bible into German, that Gutenberg, that's off the top of my head. Is that right? That's like a $125,000 question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So I am going straight to the bank. But yeah, I think, we played trivia with a guy from, where is he from? Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or something like that a couple years ago. And I was really hoping that by imparting my seed upon him when he went back from Baltimore to, Saskatchewan or wherever he was from, that it was going to spread like wildfire in Canada. But I think it's not densely populated enough out there in the prairie provinces, or whatever they call them, the farmlands. Not sure, I don't recall. But so Canada's still a work in progress. But hey, I tell you what, if we could hit the Taiwan market, or maybe get an Olympic sponsorship or something, since China and its subsidiaries, China, are hosting 3 straight Olympics. And I was talking to Rachel about this 2 days ago. Freaking Beijing, it's not a secret anymore. It's been that we've known this for many years up to this point, but they host in 2008 and 2022. I mean, give me a break. Share the wealth, man. Has that ever happened before? Just is absurd. Listener discretion is advised when you're listening to the Beantown podcast. Number 1, we'll occasionally use some language. Number 2, this podcast is objectively terrible. Jess says Martin Luther. That's a good answer. That might be right. We're gonna have to go to the research team after this. I think Martin Luther was big for the 95 Theses nailed to the door of the church. And then at some point before or after, I think there was someone else. It's like Gutenberg, something like that. In 1522. Is that right? 1522? Thought it was a different year than that, but maybe we're getting live information. I love this. So having this dialogue, having this discussion, conversation with the fans. Jess, thank you so much for your contributions to today's episode. Remember, go to beantownpodcast.com for all of our latest updates and news items and podcasts. So first things first, tonsillitis watch part 4, knock on wood. Still healthy. The tonsils are in pristine condition, and things are getting scary now, because in early November, fans of the podcast know historically, early November is not the problem. We have never had tonsil issues in early November. It's once we creep up towards Thanksgiving proper when the issues start. 2 years ago, right around now was when it started. I remember just that the pain was crazy, and I went into Thanksgiving and I was at my Auntie Anna's house near Wilmington, Delaware, and it was just the worst, because you're there, you're with family, you don't get to see very often, and you want to be peppy, upbeat, have conversations, just be a normal person. Because my least favorite thing, maybe not my least favorite thing, but one of my least favorite things, in addition to tonsillitis, is which at its core, okay, that just shows that you have people who love you and care about you. So that's great. But what really is tough, when it's always like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Can I get you everything every 5 minutes or so? Because I just don't want to be a burden. I don't want to burden others. And on top of that, when you have tonsillitis, you don't want to be talking. I remember that Thanksgiving 2 years ago, where I was just like, I wasn't really in any pain if I didn't have to talk or swallow or be awake. But if I had to do anything, other than those things, it was just really painful. So it was tough to kind of put on a brave face. And I don't think I even ever told anyone other than maybe my brother, who was there with me, that I was, in extraordinary pain, because I didn't want it to be like everyone asking, Quinn, how are you feeling? Quinn, how are you doing? Not that it's, I really appreciate them. I love them for that. But that's just a lot when you have to respond and your throat is like the size of a pea in terms of the opening. Last year, it was literally that on the car ride home from Thanksgiving dinner. I started to feel a throat problem. And then it was just like a little bit of a sore throat, but the tonsil hadn't gotten inflamed. And then I think on like Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, we had a long work day and I started to feel feverish. And then I think that this is an iconic Beantown episode. You can go back about a year where I told the story of doing the focus group, the taste test, which I've done tons and tons of focus groups in my life. Rarely, if ever, I think I've only done 1 or 2 taste tests. They're usually just like marketing, packaging, that sort of thing. But this was some sort of spicy popcorn. I think it's Doritos, and they've actually rolled it out now. It's either Doritos or, some other snack food company has gotten into the popcorn game. And this is what this was for. I didn't know it at the time, but I realized, and it was popcorn. So you add that to the fact that the room was actually legitimately hot. Everyone was sweating, which I don't know why that was necessary, just overreaction to the cold outside. I ended up, yada, 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 taking the train home, had to get off at Addison to puke, and then I was bedridden for the next 2 days, which was fun. Speaking of packaging, and I'm looking in the chat here, Jess, I have never been to Manchester. No, I have not been to the UK. Manchester would be cool. Scotland, I think, is like my number one. I really want to go there. I'm a big fan of, Train Spotting, Ewan McGregor, etc. So Scotland, out of all places in the UK is where I really want to go first. But obviously I would love to have time to see lots of different places. But the only other thing I'll mention before we jump into Desperate Housewives here is, you've probably seen if you've watched any TV lately, but there's a new Call of Duty game, Cold War, I think is what it's called. And I started seeing the ads heavily for it, a month ago or so. And I realized I did a focus group for them as well. And I remember, they were like seeing the commercials more or less that we were shown like this time a year ago. And it was just cool to kind of see, some of my, it's not like my feedback was the only thing that they got and took into consideration, but some of the things that I suggested or felt or said, oh no, you should maybe consider this, were incorporated into at least their advertising and marketing campaign. So obviously I haven't played the game and I won't. I think I've played a total of 90 minutes of Call of Duty in my entire life. But it was kind of cool to see the commercials, be things that you've impacted and you've, given feedback on and suggested. That's just kind of a neat little thing. Not that I'm getting paid. No paid Call of Duty partnership here, unfortunately, but everyone's talking about the PS5. I think in college we had PS3, I think is what we played. iPhone is up to 12 right now. I think I'm rocking a 6. Are they going to skip 13? Is it going to be like the hotels where you skip the 13th floor because it's unlucky? TBD. Someone will have to ask Tim Apple, see what he says about that. I see in the chat, Jess says I've driven to Glasgow. It can't be too far. UK is pretty small, right? Probably 5-6 hours, something like that. That's cool. Yeah, I'd like to go to Glasgow. I'd like to go to Edinburgh, among other places. Let's jump into our planned material here, and I use the term plan very loosely because I'm just going off the top of my head of what happened in this past week of Desperate Housewives of Real Salt Lake. So the episodes come out on Wednesday nights on Bravo. I think I saw it Thursday night. So to recap, from last week, we had the season premiere, and there are 6 ladies, 2 blondes, 2 brunettes, and 1 African-American, 1 kind of Tongan and Taiwanese combo. I don't recall the full thing. Tagalog, something like that. Tagalog's not an ethnicity, it's a language. Dummy. So we have, and I think I've got the names down now. There's Meredith, who was like originally my favorite. Blonde, has had a lot of work done. Looks like the youngest, not sure if she is, but seems pretty level-headed. She's the one who has the dad who's a drug addict, and he has just the worst hair I've ever seen in my life. And then the other blonde is her cousin, Heather, who looks very scary. But as of this episode, Heather is my favorite because she just seems like the most grounded, the most normal. Those are the 2 blondes. The 2 brunettes are Lisa, who I didn't really know much about. Lisa's pretty bitchy, and she owns 3 different tequila lines, I think. I think that's Lisa. And then there's also the other one. Oh, shoot. What's her name? We're going to have to Google it. And then and Meredith has the son Brooks, I think, although we found out that the blonde who I originally liked has a son too named Brooks, who is less of a personality. He's also like 8 years old. Man, what are these girls' names, these ladies' names? I really thought that I liked Meredith, but Meredith is not a blonde. Meredith is a brunette. Okay, there's Heather, Jen, Mary, those are the two ones we haven't got to. Whitney, that's okay. Whitney, like the Pokemon gym leader from Gen 2. Whitney is a blonde. Whitney and Heather are cousins. Meredith is a brunette. And then you have Jen Shaw, who is married to an assistant football coach at University of Utah. And then you have Mary, who is African American. She's the one who's a preacher at a Pentecostal church and married her own grandfather, which is just yikes. So we pick up the episode. They're still at this party from last week, and there's just a lot of moving, a lot of grooving. And, they kind of circle back to this Mary and Jen feud, where Jen said that Mary said that she smelled like hospital, but Jen had just come from her aunt getting double amputation, and Mary said that she can't stand the smell of hospitals because one time she was getting Botox on her armpits and she died twice on the operating table, which I didn't even know you could die from armpit surgery, but apparently you can. So I will not be getting armpit surgery. And then we kind of show a flashback to this other time at the party that was shown briefly in the first episode, where Lisa is like walking past, and I don't know if it was Heather or Meredith, I don't really remember, but she just kind of says hi and just moves quickly past. To me, it's like whatever, but apparently is some big thing. Who I used to be my favorite, now she's my second favorite because Heather, her cousin, is my favorite. Whitney is talking to, I think it's Lisa, and apparently for Whitney's wedding vow renewal with her husband, who's like 20 years older than her, and, she had slept with him when she was originally married because he was her boss and is a super sexy, sultry kind of thing. And Whitney's apparently had used Lisa's like in-house bartenders or something for her vow renewal. And according to Whitney, the bartenders were really tipsy and just like not super professional, which I think is a perfect. And Whitney wasn't like accusatory. So he just wanted to let Lisa know, like, hey, just so you know, these staff members, like, it wasn't a great experience. So if you want to take care of it on your own in-house, you can. And Lisa blew up, got super mad at Whitney, which to me just felt very out of line because Whitney's not like asking for reparations or being accusatory or anything. She's just letting Lisa know, like, hey, if you want to handle this on your own, just letting you know, this is the experience I had. It's like leaving a Yelp review, but in person. Anyway, so that went down. And then there's some, minor stuff happening. They kind of go their own ways. We find out that, Meredith, I think it is married to this one guy. He's working in Chicago, and I'm pretty sure he has a double family. Maybe his name is Chris. I don't really remember. Anyways, they go out to supper, and it's just like a shocking revelation. Apparently, they are separated, which I don't think had been revealed up until this point. And they're talking about like dating other people, and it's just this whole big thing, and it's just very dramatic, and we don't really understand the relationship. But definitely at first it was like maybe Chris has a secret family, but maybe that we were just like wondering here. But now it's like, oh, he definitely has a secret family in Chicago because they're not even together. They're separated. I think they're legally still married, but like not even Brooks could keep that family together. And then they're like Whitney and Heather, who are cousins, and Meredith, they all go to the top of the double-decker Black Diamond Double D. And I think they're all good skiers. I think they're all native Utonians. I'm not sure. But they're skiing. And then you have Mary shows up, who's definitely the worst one. This is the girl, the lady who is the preacher at a Pentecostal church, and she married her own grandpa, which is just gross. And she shows up in like Gucci, and she's wearing some sort of raccoon on her head, and she doesn't know how to ski. And so her and Jen and Lisa are like doing the bunny hill and trying to flirt with their ski instructors, but it's really not that exciting. Anyways, they have a fun day on the powder, And in the last scene, they all go to dinner, the 6 of them, plus 2 friends who we didn't really get any introduction to, and they don't really have any screen time or lines or personality. But then Whitney confronts Lisa. It's kind of Whitney and Heather, who are cousins again, the 2 blondes. They confront Lisa about how Lisa was very aggressive and combative, and apparently threatening, combative, combative, when Whitney was just trying to share with Lisa that the bartenders that she kind of like gave her for her wedding vow renewal, I don't know, didn't do a great job. And Lisa was out of line and being like, oh, well, you're like, you shouldn't complain. This is my gift to you. Well, you gave me pretty shitty bartenders. Apparently, like there's broken glass everywhere. They were drinking on the job, which is just like not an okay thing to do. Apparently, I guess it's a Utah thing. I don't know. But then there's this whole big table blow up, and you still have Mary trying to like stir up this drama with Jen about the whole hospital thing. But you can tell that it's just, oh, we lost our SoundCloud feed. Okay, we're back on GarageBand, not SoundCloud. YouTube, Desperate Housewives of Salt Lake City. They're at this dinner, and Mary's still trying to stir up this whole hospital thing, which is just stupid. But she's also not the center of attention on this particular drama, because now it's like Lisa versus Heather and Whitney, and then Meredith is kind of just like there too, and Jen is just kind of there too. She's not really interested in Mary's BS anymore. And then you have these 2 other friends as well who are just kind of sitting there, and the servers are just kind of like coming around with drinks occasionally. And finally, Lisa like says, I'm sorry, but it's clearly not like genuine. And Lisa's kind of just, I don't know, doesn't seem like a kind person. She's got an attitude. She feels much more like New Jersey, East Coast than any of these other ladies. So here's sort of where we left it. Like, I think Heather's my new favorite, even though she's very scary looking. She's like pretty normal, pretty grounded. And then you have Whitney, who has got a lot of work done, but I think looks the best. So those are the 2 blondes. They're cousins. They're pretty grounded, pretty normal, even though Whitney was the one who had the sultry affair with her boss, and now they're married for 20 years or whatever. And then you have Meredith, who has the husband issue. Husband has a secret family, and her son is Brooks, but she seems pretty like fine and okay too. Then you have Jen Shaw, who's like a little bit too dolled up for my taste, but she's the one who's like half Tonganese and half Taiwanese or Filipino or something like that. She seems okay. And then you have my 2 least favorites, who are Lisa, who is a brunette and just very rude and not kind. And then you have Mary, who is married to her grandpa, and she is just the worst. Attitude problem, wore a mink on her head to go alpine or downhill skiing, and it's just, she's the worst. So that's a recap of episode 2 of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Right now, even on Sundays, by appointment only, you can call Steve at 541-410-0316, and he'll get you taken care of right away. Speaking of getting taken care of, if you need a fun haircut, I got a magazine that was one of those things where it's, so-and-so's name at my address or current resident. So I'm like, well, this could be for me. And I open it up, it's a bunch of wigs. I don't remember who the company was or, whatever. I'd never gotten a piece of mail like this specifically. But it was, some interesting ideas for some new cuts, new styles. I'm trying to expand outside of just bowl cuts, buzz cuts, and fades, and beehives and bangs and all that fun stuff. So if you need a cut this holiday season, call Cuts by Q at 815-298-7200, and we'll get you taken care of right away. The Samson Q2U series, it's got crisp, clear, and clean audio quality, and it has made it through 150 episodes, which is pretty exciting. I haven't thought really of upgrading. And it'd be tough to leave Samson behind because they've been such a faithful partner with us, even though they don't know it. But I tell you what, we got some money now. It might be worth investigating upgrading to a new microphone in the future. Not so much because that Samson isn't doing the job, because I think you can hear it. The quality's been good last 150 episodes here on the Beantown podcast. but just something a little bit more high tech. And this microphone, for what it's worth, it's solid, but no real bells or whistles. And it's not new anymore, right? It's pretty worn down, pretty well used. It's still good though. If this was like super budget and we had zero money coming in, then we just stick with it and be fine. But we've got some money to play around with. Maybe we'll check it out. We'll think about it. It might be a 2021. So that you're working with Peter Krause, former Bachelorette contestant in Madison, Wisconsin, because I'm still keeping tabs on his Instagram. I DM'd him like a month ago, and he left me unread, which is very rude. And then Cafe du Chateau. Hey, you still have 8 days to go to cafeduchateau.net. Use code Q.QueenD. That's Q, then a period, and then Queen D, just the letter D, for 20% off your French press order. We just had some yesterday morning again. Super tasty, super scrumptious, and thanks to Chef Rach or Barista Rach, I don't know what her formal title is, what she prefers, TBD, for making the coffee for us yesterday morning. It was delish before I had to work. I made a fun opening PowerPoint slide, the titular slide, what a great word, Titular, titular. That was not real. For anyone wondering who saw my Instagram story or my Facebook post, it was titled, "I pity the fool who doesn't know how to write a personal statement." I ran a personal statement workshop yesterday on Zoom as part of a larger organized virtual open house for work yesterday. And that ended up not making it to the final cut of the PowerPoint, but it would have been fun. Boy, Jess has just got some wild comments here in the live chat. Thank you for tuning in. My car is a 2013 Vauxhall, Vuxhall Astra VXR, and it still looks new. I don't know if we have that car in the States. I'm not a car expert. Considering I've never owned a car before. I know my basic GMCs, Chryslers, Fords, Chevys, Hondas, Acuras, Lexus, Nexus, Hyundai, Toyota. I worked, I think, Tyota, Toyota. Pretty fun. It is part 4 of the New England road trip, and it has been an exciting adventure leading us up to the finale, which I think last week's part 3 was probably like the most action packed, had the most things to talk about. Although the pediatrician's office in Waterbury, Connecticut was pretty exciting too. Part 4, not that it's not exciting, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't talk about it, but it's a little bit more straightforward. My stays were good. I didn't do anything crazy with food. But let's jump into it here. I haven't actually reviewed these notes, which sums up the level of preparation that we've put into the previous 149 episodes here on the Beantown podcast. But let me pull up my notes that I took. And I believe when we left off last time, we had just checked in. Oh, that's not what I wanted. We had just checked in to our place in New Hampshire, right? Which we talked about the Riverview Lodge. Is that what it was called? With the crazy lady who had hate crime and all that stuff, had to pay out $10,000 or whatever it was, and the smell of this place, and it was just covered Bridge Lodge, Riverview Lodge, I don't remember. Anyway, so we wake up early. The plan, and I think I had mentioned this briefly, it's not a significant detail, but the plan was to hike a mountain that I had been given a recommendation from. So when I was finishing the day before, which is Wednesday. Oh man, Wednesday, because then we had Thursday, and then Friday, and then we flew out Saturday. Yeah, I think that's right. So Wednesday we were hiking Vermont's third tallest peak, Camel's Hump, and on the way back down, just very close to the parking lot, we ran into this guy who kind of had like a Bradley Whitford look going. Half things before we continue on with the story that I meant to say in the first half. This one I didn't even mean to say. I just thought of it now. I watched a movie last night called Other People, which I didn't know anything about, from 2016, and it's Jesse Plemons and Molly Shannon. and Bradley Whitford. It's really good. Very sad. I mean, the premise is a mom who's diagnosed with cancer, and she's surrounded by her family members as she slowly transitions. I didn't even actually know that was the premise before I started. Usually, I know what I'm getting myself into, and so it was one of those things where there were times when I couldn't be like 100% focused on it because I wasn't in the mood to get super emotional last night. But it's good. Good. It's not like the whole thing is super sad. Comedy, drama, dramedy, if you will. But well acted, kind of like hyper realistic, right? Like little vignettes of things that happen in life. So if you're looking for just like a solid, not like crazy sad watch, but for people who have gone through it, like you'll get emotional at times, because I certainly did. But it's called Other People. It's on Netflix. It's from 2016, and it's good. And then the other thing I want to mention, just I've been getting back into some Arcade Fire recently. One of my favorite bands, but it's tough because a lot of the bands that I'm into really haven't done much in the last like 3 or 4 years. Like Arcade Fire has been very quiet. Portugal the Man has been very quiet. They both have had, I think, one new song this calendar year. But I've been digging into some Arcade Fire B-sides, and they have a couple from the Suburbs, I think. The one I wanted to mention that I just love, like I've been listening to it, or there's two actually that I really like that I've been listening to a lot lately that probably most casual fans, or even and I'm just giving you some listening recommendations for songs that I'm really into. Get Right, and then the other one is Speaking in Tongues. Both really good. Go check them out after you finish listening to this episode. We'll be done soon, I promise. Wow, Jess listened to mostly 1960s music. Well, Manchester, the Beatles, that makes sense. Back to the road trip, though. On my way back down, I had ran into this Bradley Whitford looking guy, and he was telling me, about all these different recommendations, because I told him I was looking to hike in the White Mountains on Thursday. And I'm glad I just wrote down like the phonetic spellings of the suggestions he gave me, because what I wrote down when I typed in my phone and how things are actually spelled was just like wild. I'm not even exaggerating. One of them was the way he said them was the Bonds, and I'm thinking like Bonds, like BONS, BAWNS, Bonds, like James Bond. There's 3 mountains, which I didn't do those. And then the other one, because it's a big trip. And this was, I was going to hike in New Hampshire and then drive all the way up to Bangor, which is like 4 hours. So it's going to be a long day. So I wanted a hike, but not something crazy. The other one he mentioned, which also I put into my phone as like Shakura, I think, Mashukura. Mashukura. And it's CHOCOURA, Mount Shakura. So I was going to try to do that one from the Chittenden Falls Trailhead. So I woke up early in Jackson, New Hampshire, and it's like a half-hour drive down to the trailhead, which is on we talked about this last week, the Kangamangas, KANCA drive through the lower, third of New Hampshire, through the, kind of bottom edge of the White Mountains. And so I get there at like 6:30 a.m., something like that, right as the sun is rising, or before the sun is rising, because this was pre-daylight savings time. And I get there, and seasoned hikers or outdoors people will probably have a opinion or perspective on this, but I get there in the parking lot. Of course, there's no one there. It's a Thursday morning at 6:30 a.m. And it's very clearly posted, you have to have a permit to park here and to hike here. And I was just like, I don't know if I could have just like parked there, hiked for 6 hours and been perfectly fine. I don't know if I was going to be fined. So I don't know if I was going to be fine or fined. I just don't know. I don't know how these things work. And the thing is, like, it's like Newman and Kramer at the Showerheads. We got the cash. We'll pay up. but it's not like here's a like a box where you can put in your cash. And I had the cash, or an envelope of cash, because I've seen that place. It's like you have to physically buy a permit from the state, or from one of these locations or something like that. And it's like, well, these places aren't going to be open, and I'm not going to drive 45 minutes away from here to spend $20 on this annual permit or whatever it was for this hike. And so I was like, man, I really want to do this on Shakura, because it was the perfect blend of like not just a tiny little mile loop or something, but also not like a full day 12-mile up the mountain kind of hike thing. Kind of like Camel's Hump, although that turned out to be quite the expedition. So I made the judgment call, and I decided, I'm not a super I'm not a huge risk taker with this sort of thing. So to the Dunkin' parking lot, so you get free Wi-Fi. I did that. I lost track of how many times, whether or not I was actually getting coffee from a location, just sitting in the Dunkin' parking lot on their Wi-Fi. That happened a lot on this trip. So I'm like, okay, I have a long drive, like 4 hours total out to Bangor, but I've got the full day to do anything I want. I have to get into Bangor by like 6:30 at the latest, because I have class at 7. But it's like, I got time to do that. So the long story short is I research, and I find a nice medium size hike called Pleasant Mountain, which is like 3 miles out, 3 miles back. The elevation gain wasn't crazy, but it's kind of fun. The first part is very much like, you're just like climbing over rocks and stuff, and it's pretty exposed, pretty open, but we had nice weather. It was maybe, mid 40s, and not super windy, which was nice. And then you're kind of like all over the map in terms of where this trail is going. But you go up and down a little bit through the woods, and then you finally get to the top of Pleasant Mountain, and there's a cool fire tower and some other things going on there. You have good views. It was a pretty clear day, so I could see off to the west, because I had now driven into southwestern Maine. So we were out of the White Mountains now, to the east about 50 miles or so, 45 miles or so. And you could look off to the west. I think I identified which one was Mount Washington, but I really don't know, the White Mountains hardly at all. But you can see all the peaks pretty clearly. It was neat. And that was a nice hike. It took me like, I don't know, maybe 2 hours to get up the mountain, and then like maybe half that to come back down. So it was short. It was nice. Anyways, I go out to Bangor, long day of driving. And this was, I was staying with a lady and her boyfriend, and they had a kid, and I was just in there upstairs doing that. And then I woke up early the next morning. I was thinking maybe I was going to run around Bangor, but then I decided, because I wanted to do something along the Maine coast, and this is Friday, so my last full day. And I had gone back and forth. I had waffled. Do I want to pay the, I think, $35 entrance fee to Acadia? And it's like, Acadia would be so cool, but I decided, you know what, there's probably other hiking right along the Maine coast. That would be, I don't want to say just as good, but would be a fun, hike, right? So I identified through my research the night before that I'm going to go to Great Wass Island. Again, don't know my Maine pronunciation too well. But I drive out to Great Wass Island, and I had a nice day. I got there pretty early. It was maybe like a 90-minute drive from Bangor or something like that. So I had my Dunkin', and it's this island that obviously connected, that you can still drive onto it. So it's not super remote. It's pretty close to New Brunswick. So I'm maybe, 30, 45 minutes or something from the northeastern edge of the United States, frankly. But it's, this nature preserve. You walk on a trail for like a mile, from kind of the middle of the island out to the shore. You get to the coast, the beach, and it's a very rocky beach. And so I was really cool, or I was really excited. It was a nice day. It wasn't too bad. Very cloudy and a little windy, but in the trees, in the kind of interior of the island, it felt fine. Get out to the coast. I walk out because I've really been practicing my Maine accent. I've been listening to a lot of talk radio, Boston sports radio, and then Maine radio, in addition to last week's, Montreal French radio. And so I wanted to practice my accent, which I was practicing the whole time I was walking out with my Maine accent imitation. I walk out because I want it to be like, I want to do something fun, right? I don't just want to be on a random trail. I walk out into, you're kind of like skipping, hopping from stone to stone, some of them large, some of them small. But I get out into the ocean a little bit, not very far. I mean, we're talking like 100 feet from shore, something like that, from the sand, the beach. And I'm out there for like 2 minutes because I record this 10-second video. I'm not even like posting it. I'll post it when I get back to Wi-Fi. Anyways, I finish recording. I turn around. The stones, the rocks, the mini islands that I had hopped on to get to where I currently was in the ocean, completely gone. The tide was coming in very fast, and I'm not really panic mode because there's no reason to panic. But I'm just like, there is no land between me and the beach, which is, maybe 30 yards away, something like that. And I assessed the situation, but I didn't want to really waste any time because the water's clearly just getting higher and higher. So I'm like, well, there's no way around this. So I hike up my pants and I waded through, almost up to my knee deep water back to the beach, which was very cold and very smelly the rest of my hike. But this was not the worst of my problems. The middle portion of this trail on this island in this nature preserve, Great West Island, is like 1.5 miles along the beach, along the kind of rocky edge of the northeast kind of corner of this island. And at first you're just kind of like hopping around and it's okay. But I sort of turned a corner and the wind patterns changed and the rain broke from above, from the heavens. And the wind's also very scary because there are some portions with very jagged rocks and you have to do some scrambling and leaping over, crevasses and things that I just am not super comfortable doing. And it just was, it was only 1.5 miles, but I swear to God, it felt like 5. It was so wet and so windy, and I was so cold, just frozen like a popsicle. And the other thing I'll say is it might seem very simple in terms of where to go, finding the trail, that sort of thing, because you're just sort of following the edge of the island, right? You're on the sort of edge of the island, the rocks, the beach, etc. But I didn't know exactly when it was going to turn back inland to get back to the parking lot. And it wasn't clearly marked. And I did not want to be on this island or on this, edge of this island for any longer than I had to, because it was just, I can't stress how upsetting it was. I was miserable. Finally, after what felt like forever, it was probably like an hour, battling the conditions, but you turn back inland and then it's like another mile back through the woods to the parking lot. And that was fine. But just with having the soggy feet, smelling like lobsters and ocean, and the occasional leap across a gigantic hole in the rocks, on very slippery and sharp rocks with the wind just blasting you and rain in your face, man, that was a tough one. It went from oh, this is a pleasant little nature preserve to holy crap, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here real fast. If you've never seen that show, Patty Blagojevich, classic. She should have won, not Lou Diamond Phillips. Drive to Bar Harbor, which is where Acadia is on what's it called? Great Desert Island, something like that. So I kind of just drove around, didn't really get out to do anything. It's kind of like a summer town as you would expect. But actually my friend and former roommate, Sam Anderson, went out there with his family this past week, and looks like he had a nice time. The pictures were nice. But I keep working my way back down. I end up, I'm going to drive to Brunswick, Maine, where my cousin Deji is a professor. And on the way down there, I was listening to a lot of different radio things, but just the one thing, and I don't remember a lot about this, but I'll just mention it. Occasionally I'll find like the Jesus channel, and you get some really good, like you get a combination of sermons, but then like the old school things that were made in the 70s, like stories that are made by old white guys with fun different voices, and you get the kid actors and stuff. There was this one story that was about apparently sacrificial gifts, and the story is essentially you have these two kids, and they have this dog, and it's their best friend, and there's this old man who lives in this spooky house at the end of the street up on the hill, and the old man like asks them to buy their dog, which is obviously like, no, we're not going to sell you our dog. But then the kid's mom is like, don't you remember what you learned about in church about sacrificial gifts and how in order to serve and love the Lord, you have to make big sacrifices sometimes? And so the kids are like, well, I guess our big sacrifice is we have to sell our dog to old man Crowder or whatever this guy's name is. And so they sell this guy their dog, which is just like the sad, and they're super sad. And I'm just like, and it's a kind of happy ending. The old man, change of heart, Home Alone ending, whatever. Like, oh, I see the children are sad without their dog. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. So he's going to give their dog back. But then the mom is the real villain in this story, because then she's like, well, you can't just give it back because you paid them money for it. But maybe if they work for you, slave labor, then eventually after a year or something, then they'll have made enough, granted minimum wage for 12-year-olds was 35 cents an hour back in the 70s when this was made. Then after a year or something, then maybe you can give them the dog back because they'll have earned it. And that's the story. And this wasn't like a joke. This is something that people are actually like producing and consuming. I was just shocked. I mean, this is one of the worst things I've ever heard. Anyways, I heard that on the radio. Shocking. Met up with my cousin. We had some tea and connected. That was nice. Anyways, I get to Portland, which is a really nice Airbnb spot. I was just in this older couple's, like their basement was a private basement that had everything I wanted, and just kind of chilled out there. Other stuff I could say, but not super important. Had some really good pizza. Leonardo's Pizza in Portland, Maine came in with zero expectations. 10 out of 10 would recommend. It was fantastic. Best pizza I had on the trip. Wake up the next morning, it's Saturday morning, and it's like a 2-hour drive to Boston. I go down there, everything's fine, return the rental car, get on the plane. The only crazy thing that happened, I had to connect in Atlanta. And, I'm back in like 27D or something. And going out, I had two flights, loading, deplaning process. People were, not doing this stand-up thing and rush to the front. They're like, over the intercom, it's like, please 6 feet apart. And going out to Boston at the start of the trip, everyone was following the rules. It was beautiful. This is what society could be like. Coming back, I mean, it happened to a minor extent in Chicago on the second half of my leg, but I get to Atlanta. And I'm close, at the like middle of the plane. So we land, we get to our gate, and just from the back comes a mass horde of very rude African Americans. There's no social distancing, and it wasn't just like, oh yeah, we're gonna rush up to the front. It was like we're playing for the Georgia Bulldogs or something, playing fullback at Georgia, the muscling, elbowing to move other people out of the way. And it's just like, we all have flights that we're trying to catch. It was just to see that level of like disrespect, not only in terms of how you talk to people, because there was some language being thrown around, some racial slurs. It was great. But also just it kind of like disorienting to see the physical contact given the current state of global pandemics. It was just nuts, and something that I hadn't seen in a while and hope to never see again. But I thought there was like a legit race riot that was about to break out, because it wasn't just like groan, roll our eyes. There were some very combative people. Not only the group that was moving and grooving and boogieing their way up to the front looking like freaking CJ Ham there blocking for Dalvin Cook, but just the people that they were, bumping out of the way, and just kind of sat there with my head down. And it wasn't just them. There were a lot of other people too who were doing the stand up rush to the front of the plane as far as you can get sort of thing. So even though I should have been like the 50th person off the plane out of, 120, I ended up being like the 90th person, because every time you think it's going to be your turn, you stand up, you check your mirrors, you look over your left shoulder. Can I go into the alley or the aisle now? Nope, because there's a huge line of people passing, which is just like, what do you do in that situation? It's just frustrating, especially with COVID, because I'm not trying to like physically cut in front of someone who is about to make a move on my row, because I don't want to be in close contact with that person. Yikes. It's always an adventure. But I tell you what, I get back to Chicago like 7 p.m. or something Saturday night, and it's daylight savings time ending that night. So I did get an extra hour of sleep, but back to reality, back to normal. And that, my friends, is a wrap on the New England road trip. Can you imagine if I had tried to do that all in one episode? It would like be 4 hours long, because there's so much I didn't want to cut out. And I tell you what, there's so much more that I could have shared with you. Obviously I gave you the best parts, but there's a lot more that happened. And what happens in the Green Mountains stays in the Green Mountains. So as a reminder, we started in Boston. We went down to Providence, Rhode Island, Manhattan, Waterbury, Connecticut, the pediatrician's room, over to Cooperstown, Baseball Hall of Fame, the Finger Lakes, Ithaca, Cornell, ever heard of it? Highest rank in the Ivy League. Went up to Utica, up to Lake Placid, two-time host of the Winter Olympic Games, all the way up to the border of Canada, listened to some Montreal French radio, over down to the Camel's Hump, scariest hike I've ever done in my life, icy, windy, and very cold at the top with zero visibility. And then that also included a nice little poop in the woods. We stayed in this New Hampshire lodge with this owner who's been accused and had to pay out due to a hate crime. And we hiked Pleasant Mountain in Maine, which was very pleasant, with a neat little fire tower. We went out to Great West Island, where I thought I was going to die a couple of times, and we listened to a lot of Boston sports radio, and boy, do they still miss Tom Brady. And Leonardo's Pizza in Portland. Great slice of pizza. That was our trip, with a whole lot of Dunkin', maybe, 10 to 12 different Dunkin' runs in my 6 to 7 days, a whole lot of apple cider donuts from a number of places, and a lot of driving. I don't know the exact mileage, somewhere around 2,000. I was driving about 6 or 7 hours a day, oftentimes way out of the way for one reason or another, but I saw a lot of things, had a good time, and it was nice to get away for a little while. I'll tell you that much. So thank you for tuning in to not only the 4 parts of the New England road trip, but today's Beantown podcast. That's what I have for you. Next week, some sort of Thanksgiving special. I don't know what it's going to look like, but from my family to yours, happy Thanksgiving. We're gonna settle in here, watch some football, and have a nice little relaxing day. I already walked 3 miles this morning, got my groceries, so we are in here for the long run. Get some Toon Blast going, check the tweets. I'm all set for some action. Everyone, thanks for listening. Episode 150 of the Beantown podcast. It's pretty cool, pretty exciting. If we end it now, we'll finish right about an hour, which is where I want it to be. I'm going to check in on you very soon, and have a happy Thanksgiving, which I already said like 3 times. And I'll check in on you soon, which is the second time I've said this. That's all I got. Ending the YouTube stream. Peace, YouTube. And for those listening to just the audio, I'll